All right, so today we're going to dive into a story that really changed the entire world. But to get to the prophet, we first have to understand the man, the orphan, the shepherd, the merchant. This is the story of Muhammad's early life, right from his birth in Mecca all the way to that moment that kicked off his incredible mission.
And that really brings us to this big question, right? How does an orphan shepherd from Mecca become one of the most influential people ever? I mean, how does a life that starts with so much loss become the foundation for a faith that spans the globe? To figure that out, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in the year 570. The place? The Arabian Peninsula. Specifically, the city of Mecca, which was this buzzing, lively hub. And believe me, this year was already shaping up to be a pretty big deal. So he was born in this year, 570 CE, which later got this really cool name, the Year of the Elephant. Why? Well, it's named after this incredible event where Mecca was supposedly saved from a massive invading army that even had elephants. But for the baby Muhammad, this year was significant for a much sadder, more personal reason. He was born an orphan. His father had actually passed away before he was even born. And, that loss of his father, well, that was just the start of a childhood that was, frankly, filled with a lot of change and instability, moving between different family members who looked after him.
Just look at this timeline. It really shows you what he went through. Loss was just always there. When he was only 6 years old, his mother died. Then his grandfather Abdul took him in, but tragically, he passed away just 2 years later. So by the time he's 8, he's finally taken in by his uncle Abu Talib. And this is huge, because his uncle becomes this incredibly important and protective figure in his life.
Now, despite all this personal hardship, it's important to know he wasn't just anybody. He was part of the Quraysh tribe, and they were the big shots in Mecca, the ones who ran the city. And Mecca itself, it was the place to be. It was this major center for trade, with caravans coming and going, and it was also a huge religious pilgrimage site. So as he got older, he gets into the family business, you could say, trade. And while doing that, he started to build something that was way more valuable than money. He built a reputation. And it's this reputation that would define him for the rest of his life. His character was really shaped out there, on those long trade journeys and in the busy markets. He started out as a shepherd in his teens, but then he started going on these trading trips with his uncle. And in everything he did, he just became known for being incredibly honest. So much so that people actually gave him nicknames. Al-Sadiq, the truthful one, and Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. That's a pretty amazing reputation to have. And word gets around, right? This reputation he had for being so honest and reliable, it reached the ears of one of the most powerful merchants in Mecca, a woman named Khadija. She was incredibly successful, wealthy, a real businesswoman, and she was looking for someone she could absolutely trust to run her business affairs. So Khadija hires him. And yeah, she was impressed by his business skills, but what really got her attention was his character, his integrity. What started as a business relationship turned into deep respect and admiration. And then, in a move that was really ahead of its time, she, a 40-year-old powerful woman, proposed marriage to him, this 25-year-old man who worked for her. He accepted, and they went on to have a really strong, supportive marriage and 6 children together. So at this point, his life seems pretty set, right? He's a respected merchant, a family man. Things are good. But something else was stirring inside him, a kind of spiritual searching that would eventually lead him to a moment that didn't just change his life, but change the world. As he got older, into his late 30s, he started to feel this pull to get away from it all. He'd leave the hustle and bustle of Mecca and go up to a cave on a nearby mountain, Mount Hira, just to be alone and think. He'd spend days there, meditating, really grappling with the big questions in life. And then one night, when he's about 40 years old and up in that cave, his quiet retreat is shattered. Suddenly, he realizes he's not alone. There's this incredibly powerful, just overwhelming presence with him in the cave. This presence was the angel Gabriel, and he came with a message, the very first verses of what would become the Quran. And the command was so simple, but for Muhammad, it was absolutely terrifying. The angel said, "Recite." Now, this wasn't some peaceful, quiet vision. It was intense. It was physically overwhelming. He was completely terrified and shaken. He ran down that mountain and went straight home to the one person in the world he knew he could turn to, his wife, Khadija. And Khadija, She was just incredible. She was his rock. She didn't think he was crazy. She didn't dismiss what he was saying. Instead, she just held him and comforted him and reminded him of the man he was. She said, Allah will never disgrace you. You're good to your family. You help the poor. You're generous to your guests. She was basically saying a God who knows your heart would never do something to shame you. Her support was absolutely crucial.
So after this life-altering experience, the call to this new faith, Islam, officially begins. But it doesn't start with a big announcement to the whole city. No, it starts small. It starts quietly, almost in secret.
The very first person to accept the message, no surprise here, it was his wife, Khadija. She was the first believer. After her came his best friend, Abu Bakr, and then his young cousin, Ali, who was living with him at the time. So you see, the faith really started right there, in his own home, with the people closest to him.
And they had to be secret because what he was preaching was radical for that time and place. It was dangerous. This small group of new Muslims was vulnerable, so they had to meet secretly, either in the Prophet's house or in other quiet spots where the leaders of the Quraysh couldn't see them.
This went on for about 3 years. The message spread person to person, and the community grew, slowly but steadily. And then, another divine command came through. And this one changed everything. It basically said, the time for being secret is over. It's time to take this message public.
This was a huge, huge turning point. Think about it. The message was going from the safety of a private home out into the public squares of Mecca for everyone to hear. The time for being careful was done. A whole new phase, one of open declaration and, yes, confrontation was about to kick off.
Which brings us right to our final question for today. To stand up and preach a message about one God in a city whose entire economy and social structure was built around worshiping many gods, well, that was a truly radical move. So with this new command to speak openly, what kind of challenges was he about to face? What happens next? Well, that's a story for another explainer.